Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, the February 12th, show 921. Thank you guys very much for joining me here this Wednesday evening, 2 days before Valentine's Day, and if you don't celebrate, it's Singles Awareness Day. No, that's stupid. But it's funny to see people complain about Valentine's Day, but not about Christmas. In other words, if you don't celebrate it, just let it go. You know, if you don't have anyone to celebrate with, and I understand that. I've gone through many a Valentine's Day without a significant other, and it can be kind of tough, especially with everything around you being focused on that particular day. But isn't it like Jews with Christmas? Isn't it the same kind of thing? I saw this funny story of let me see if I can find it. The number one, the most powerful, the most popular Valentine's Day gifts to give in the United States: greeting cards, candy, flowers, an evening out, jewelry, clothing, and gift cards. And that's broken up between men and women. What people plan on giving. So in other words, 58% of women plan on giving greeting cards. 50% give candy. Do women give candy? That's interesting. Only 15% of women give flowers, which makes sense. Flowers are generally thought of as a thing that a man gives to a woman on Valentine's Day. But switch it up. Guys don't mind getting flowers. Send them to the office, because I think it's kind of fun. An evening out, jewelry, again, same thing. Women give jewelry very rarely. Men only give it 29%, which is, guys, if you have a significant other, jewelry is the easiest thing in the world to give. Just buy a set of earrings. Notice what earrings she wears tomorrow and buy a pair of those. So if she wears little tiny like pearl earrings, buy a pair of pearl earrings. And they don't have to be expensive. You can literally, ladies, stick your fingers in your ears. Guys, you can go to Walmart and get little tiny pearl earrings. They'll cost you under $20. If she likes dangly earrings, you know, either the big hoop ones or Alessandra loves these ornate dangly earrings. So you just buy those. It's easy. It's easy. Guys should not complain about Valentine's Day, because Valentine's Day is the one day of the year, the one celebratory event of the year where you know exactly what to get her. It's easy. A box of candy, a bouquet of flowers, some jewelry, an evening out. Done. Pick 2 of those things, guys. Get a card at the mall. Pick 2 of those 5 things. You're golden. Women don't need or want necessarily a bunch of fancy stuff. What they need and want is you to be thinking about them on that particular day. And yeah, I know, guys, we don't understand it, because our logic is, well, we think about them all the time. Well, they also want you to think about them on a particular day, too. And every supermarket nowadays has flowers, and they don't got to be roses. They could be a batch of lilies or chrysanthemums, or I don't know, a mixed bouquet. And that same supermarket, that same mall, is going to have a place where you can buy candy and a card. Done. Guys who complain about Valentine's Day, it's like, dude, you just don't get it. It's the easiest one. Christmas, you got to think of something different. Their birthday, you got to think of something different. Mother's Day, well, breakfast in bed, you're good. But Valentine's Day, it's already done for you. What to get her is already done for you. Switch it up. What do ladies get? I think it's harder for women to buy stuff if they buy stuff for Valentine's Day. We often think of Valentine's Day as being a man-to-woman thing, but it should be equal. Do women buy guys chocolate? Do women buy guys a card? You know, they should. It's easy enough to do. Guys often like gift cards, so gift cards are the guy's favorite store. An evening out, you could also do that too. So I think Valentine's Day is an easy way to do it. Have you been watching the Olympics? Yay, Canada! Oh my goodness, we're doing so well because it's a winter, and we're really good at winter stuff. The men's curling team 2-2, not great. Women's curling team 3-0. Canadian women's hockey in the semifinals. They had a great game against the Americans today. For those folks who weren't tuning into the pre-show, I was saying that Canadians are generally nice, pleasant, kind, gentle, giving people until we're playing hockey against the Americans. And then we just turn into male and female bitches. We just get so crazy. It was so funny watching that game. The announcer actually said after a couple of fairly hard pseudo body checks from the Canadian team and the Americans. The Americans were body checking too. It was kind of funny to hear the announcer say that the referees are putting away the whistles to let the Canadians and Americans beat on each other because that's what they want to do. They want to beat on each other. I don't understand why there's no body checking in women's hockey. Isn't that kind of sexist? I don't see a reason why they shouldn't be able to body check. That's one of the tenets of hockey, is to knock the guy off the puck. Why wouldn't the girls be able to do it too? If it's something as stupid as, oh, they're too delicate, tell it to Haley Wickenheiser. She'll slam your ass into the boards. I don't get the and the thing is too, if you watch the games, you can really see the difference. There's a exponential difference between the Canadian and U.S. teams and the other countries. They're so much faster. Their passes are crisper. They're just better players. There's no way around it. No other way to describe it. The gold medal match will come down to Canada versus the U.S. That's almost a stone cold lock. Not so true with the Canadian men's hockey team, but definitely the women's hockey final will be Canada versus the U.S. Been enjoying a lot of the sports. I'll have it on. You see in that TV right there. I'll have that on in the background all day, watching whatever's on. I mean, I'm watching this afternoon. I'm watching snow jogging, or as they call it, cross-country skiing. But it's snow jogging. Now, I'm not saying I can do it. I'm not saying I go out there and put sticks to my feet and do it, because I couldn't. There's no way in God's little green earth I could ever do it. But it seems like it's just jogging in the snow. But at least it kind of makes sense, snow jogging. Two-man luge, I don't understand. I do not understand the point of two-man luge. I get luge, I get skeleton, bobsled, two-man, four-man, got it. I'm with you. But if you have two-man luge, why isn't there two-woman luge? Why isn't there two-man skeleton? It's the same idea, just faced in a different direction. Or two-woman skeleton. I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't get the point of two-man luge. It makes no sense. And it's not a homoerotic thing at all, although it is silly. It is definitely a silly top and bottom thing. You can make all the jokes you want about that. It's just the game itself, the activity itself doesn't make a lot of sense to me at all. Mosquito says two-man luge is about steering. One-man luge is about steering. You don't steer better because there's a guy in the bottom. It's not functionally different from single-man luge. You're still steering. It's the exact same course. It's not longer. It's not icier. It's the exact same sport, just with one guy on top of the other. It's silly. Ampersand. Luge is awesome. Shut your pie hole. No, I agree with you. I like watching the luge. I love watching skeleton. I love watching those things. They're so subtle. They're wonderfully, wonderfully subtle sports. But like I said, two-man luge is just remarkably pointless. If you want something really interesting, one of the things that Mosquito says two-man is sexier. Okay. There was if you follow me on Sulia, you'll see that I posted a really interesting, at least to me anyway, interesting New York Times story. I'm trying to find it now. Where is it? VS Cam, where'd it go? No, I pushed it on the loop. Hang on. About the technical aspects of ski jumping. And ski jumping just seems, and don't lie, the only reason any of us watch ski jumping is because we were kids. We watched ABC Wild World of Sports, and we saw that guy fall off every Saturday afternoon. And to this day, we all watch ski jumping to see a guy fall off. Don't lie. It's absolutely true. That's the only reason we watch ski jumping. Yeah, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Exactly. Exactly. The Mac Man is trying to tell a story. When I was heckling Robin Williams, yes, the comedian, Mac Man tells it wrong, but the basic idea is that he mentioned the Canadian hockey team. This is the 2002 Olympics in Salt Lake City. He mentioned Canadian hockey, and for no apparent reason, I'm an idiot, and I yelled. I didn't heckle him. I just yelled, "Ah!" And he started going off on Canada. It was hilarious. But if you go to loopinsight.com and check out the story about the ski jump, and it's not just the ski jump story. Ski jumping is much more technical than I expected. It's at least the description of the New York Times makes it sound really interesting. I'll post this in the IRC chat room for those folks who are in the IRC. But the idea of it is the way they used the website to describe it is very interesting too. And they also got a segment on luge, slope style, and half pipe. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it's interesting. So check it out. So where else was I going to go with that? Oh, I want to say a big thank you to the bunch of companies. The companies are nice folks at Danny P are giving away a product. The folks at Fuzz Designs are giving away an EverDock, a couple of EverDocks. Glovely is giving away touchscreen gloves. Pixelmator is giving away a copy of Pixelmator. Primo Vista is giving away bamboo iPhone and iPad products. Nice folks at Scotty Vest are giving away one of their very cool multi-pocket vests. Small Software is giving away 2 prizes, a PDF pen prize pack and a text expander prize pack. Topaz Labs is giving away a $380 prize pack, one each of every product they have. The nice folks at, what else have I got? Tidbits is giving away a 1-year subscription to the entire Take Control library, every single one of their books. Pat and Quill is giving away 2 little pocket books for the iPhone 5 and 5S. Mac Fun is giving away 3 creative kits, a bundle consisting of Snap Peel Pro and Intensify. Boink Software is giving away 1 each of iStop Motion, Photo Magico, and Boink's TV. And Tom Bin is giving away a Synapse 25 backpack. Those are all the companies that so far are involved in the 20th anniversary of Mac podcasting. On the 19th of March, we'll be doing the show, The Origins of Mac Internet Broadcasting. I know that's the March 19th, 1994 date because I was the first guy to do Macintosh Internet Broadcasting. Encouraged, by the way, I want to say this because she's in the IRC chat room, encouraged by Sly. It wouldn't happen if Sly hadn't encouraged me, if Sly hadn't helped me all these years. So a big thank you to, if you like this show for whatever reason, you also should give a big thank you to Sly because she was instrumental in starting up the various versions of the show. So thanks very much to Sly for that. So on the 19th of March, we're going to be doing the origin of YML show. We're going to be talking about probably the first time I've ever done the full thing of why YML started and the stories of what I've been doing for the last 20 years and why I've been doing it for the last 20 years. So we'll talk about that, and all these companies are giving away products. So all during that show, I'll give away stuff. We've got over $1,500 worth of products to give away, and more is coming. So I want to make sure you guys know about that stuff. You can enter the prize draw by going to the website at yourmaclifeshow.com and here and fill in the Friends of YML contest entry form in March. You can do it in February, but you have to do it again in March. Make sure you remember to do that. But if you're a subscriber to Your Mac Life at 2, 5, 10, 15, whatever amount of money you'd like to do it at, the subscribers get their entry form put in automatically. All you do is subscribe to the show once, and once a month, PayPal takes 2, 5, 10, 15 bucks out of your major credit card, your American Express, your Visa, your MasterCard, whatever it might be, sends it to me, and then I drop your name into the virtual hat. And for every amount over $2 you subscribe, you get an extra entry form. It's free to sign up, but if you want to game the system and get extra entry forms to win some of these great prizes, you can do that by just all you got to do is subscribe at a higher amount than $2. I see our good friend Jim Downpool is in the IRC chat room, in the Google Hangout. So let me just check to make sure Jim is there. There's Jim. Jim's microphone is now turned on, I think. Where is he? Is that Jim? That's Divine. I'm sorry. Here I'm trying to turn Divine's microphone on because Divine looks like Jim. He's not even a little bit. Why can't I hear myself? That's not good. All right, so we're just waiting for Jim to show up. So just saw another entry form come in. Don't forget, those are for the month of February, but I'll remind you guys again in the month of March to sign up. The website, for you guys in the IRC chat room, just because I like you IRCers more than anyone else in the world, I'll just post the URL to that. That page isn't officially live yet, IRCer, so don't pass that around just yet. But those are the companies and the products that are being given away on the show on March 19th when we do the origin of your Mac life. His shadow, Shawn King, sometimes we think you're the only one you can hear here. Yes. Yes, I don't know what that means. Not quite sure. Mosquito says, I wish the original audio for the first broadcast was still available. I'd love to hear how green Shawn King was. I don't know if it sounds any better than it is now, man. I think the biggest difference in sound quality had to be the first show that Adam Clark, the original co-host of the show, and I did from New York City, from the first time we broadcast live from Macworld Expo. This is 97. Okay, so 1997, we were broadcasting live from the Macworld Expo. And that first day, Adam and I are just so excited. I mean, we're amped up. We are just completely, A, we're a couple of Canadians in New York City. B, we're doing the show in New York City. Our expenses are paid. We got money. There are people. It's Expo, because in those days, for those folks who remember the Javits Center, the shows at the Javits Center, MacMan says I have the first YML episode. MacMan, send that to me, or send me a link to that, because I haven't heard it. So we were very amped to be there, and we were determined to go to everything. In those days, the Javits Center took up both sides of the hall. It took up the entire ground floor of the Javits Center. There was 500 to 600 vendors in that place. There was 50,000 people. You know, the Macworld Expos of even 10 years ago pale compared to those ones. So this was a huge, huge deal. Remember, this was 97. This is when we all thought Apple was going to die. Apple was just on its last legs, and someone was going to buy them and shut the company down. But to be able to go to a building, a room, and see all those vendors, and they all had stuff for you. All this stuff worked on your computer. You didn't have to ask someone, oh, is it Mac compatible? It was all Mac compatible. And it was primarily software in those days, too. And so we were really, really excited. And we set a bunch of interviews, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. The funniest part was Adam ran the show off a Unix box, literally a Unix box. Not OS 10 running Unix. It was Unix. He was a straight-up Unix geek. And he had to hide the tower, the Unix tower he had underneath the desk, because we were afraid Mac users wouldn't like us if they saw the Unix box. And he had a cover over top of his monitor so people couldn't see that he was looking at a Unix command line the entire time. So he kind of sat behind me doing the audio, and not introducing, but greeting guests at the time. So we did this for that time. Expos were Tuesday to Friday, and we were determined to get as much as we possibly could out of a Macworld Expo. We were going to be at every party, at every event. We were just going to have fun. We had no idea when this was going to happen again. So by Friday, the Friday show, it sounds like this. So the Tuesday show, hi, this is Shawn and Adam. We're in New York City. This is so cool. This is so much fun. Friday, it was, hi, this is Shawn and Adam. We can't wait to go home. My voice was shot. For those of you who remember the old days, that would happen to me on a regular basis because I wasn't taking care. I didn't know how to take care of my voice. And by the Wednesday of Expo, definitely the Thursday, my voice was gone. It was just, I was squeaking out interviews, not able to make a sound half the time. Just awful. Awful. Just couldn't speak. It was hilarious. And it wasn't until probably 2 or 3 other expos before Ab and I realized we should back off a little bit. We don't, because we were going to 3, again, this was the time when there was 3 or 4 parties every single night at a Macworld Expo, including, I think, the Thursday night or the Wednesday or Thursday night when Apple had a gigantic invite-only Webster Hall party in New York City. And so, yeah, we were eating, drinking, just having way too much fun. The funniest part about it was, still waiting for Jim Dalrymple from the Loop, loopinsight.com. Someone want to ping him on Twitter to tell him he's late? Send him the URL for the, here, I'll post the URL for the podcast, the Google Hangouts. The funniest thing was we've been sent to Macworld Expo. Our sponsor at the time was a magazine that's no longer around called Mac Home Journal. And it was, the editor-in-chief was a guy named Ed Prasek. I'll tell that story a little later on. So Ed had basically hired Adam and I for expenses to go to New York. So they paid for our airfare, our hotel, and our food. They put us up at, for you folks who are in New York City, you recognize the name, one of the Leona Hemsley hotels. I don't know which one it was, but Leona Helmsley at the time was a famous hotelier and turned out tax evader in New York City. And the hotel was beautiful. I don't remember the name of the hotel, but it was in the same general area as the Javits Center, somewhere around Times Square. And so our first day there, we get there on a Monday, check in the hotel. Tuesday morning, we get up early. The show starts at, I think, 10 or 11 after the keynote. Adam and I go downstairs to the hotel restaurant. And the restaurant has got the fanciest hotel restaurant I've ever been in. And literally, they had silver everything. The coffee they served by the pitcher full was Jamaican Blue Mountain. There was fresh squeezed orange juice. The silverware was actually literally silverware. The waiters were all in tuxedos. This is for breakfast. We had breakfast. We had toast. We had scrambled eggs. We had bacon. We had coffee. We had orange juice. The bill comes, and the guy says, are you gentlemen staying at the hotel? Yes, we are. Just give me your room key, and I'll attach this to the room. Cool. Great. So we do this for, that was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We didn't leave until, I think, Sunday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So 5 days. A month later, I get a phone call from Ed Prasek, editor-in-chief of Macco Magazine. And the guy who had hired us to go to Expo. He was very happy. We talked to him later. He was very happy with the shows we did, with the exposure that we got for them being the first audio ever from a Macworld Expo. And so a month later, I get this phone call, and he's pissed at me. Just pissed because we spent so much money. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you blew your budget. I said, dude, we didn't have a budget. You paid for our airfare. You paid for our hotel. You paid for our food. He said, do you know where you ate for breakfast? I said, yeah, every morning we had breakfast in the hotel. I said, at lunch we had, usually because there was a press room, we would have sandwiches in the press room. And in the evenings, we would either eat out with the Macomb Journal folks or with other press or vendors or at the parties, whatever it was. He said, those breakfasts cost $100 each. I said, what? He said, each one of the breakfasts that you guys had was $100. I said, we had scrambled eggs and bacon, man. He said, the coffee you drank was $20 a pitcher. The scrambled eggs were $30. The bacon was $10. We had like 3 slices of bacon. We're like $10 a piece. So we cost him like $2,000 in breakfast. He said, the accountants want that money back. I said, dude, I'm not giving you the money back. I ain't got $2,000 to give you. You didn't tell us we couldn't eat in the hotel. We didn't know. We figured that was part of the whole gig. Brian Monroe, sounds like they were trying to rip you off. No, they weren't trying to rip us off. That's what breakfast cost in that hotel. Remember, this is a Helmsley hotel. This is a high-end hotel. This is a hotel where the rooms were like $300, $400, $500 a night. They weren't ripping us off. That's what they charged for breakfast. When we were there, Adam and I both noticed we were the only guys dressed normally in jeans and sweaters and T-shirts kind of stuff. Everyone else was in suits and they were having business meetings, and there was, this was a fancy place. No, they weren't ripping us off. That's just what they were charging for breakfast. Ed was just pissed. He was so upset. So the next year, we asked him, do you guys want to do this again? He said, yes, but we're not giving you a dime for food. He said, you're not getting nothing out of us for food. That was again, we're waiting for Jim Dalrymple from The Loop at loopinsight.com. That was the expo where Canon, remember this was, USB was just starting to be big. So manufacturers were coming out with USB stuff. And Canon was just coming out with their first USB scanner. It was called a Canon Z scanner. And it was a Z because the hinge in the back was letter Z. And it allowed you to scan thicker items because of the interesting hinge on it. And so we got an invite to go to these Canon events. It was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art or something. It was in some museum. And so I'm going to this event. Adam and I are both going to this event. And we walk in, and first person I see is Chris Breen from Macworld Magazine. And I'd interviewed Chris a couple of times. And I was like, oh, hi, Mr. Breen, Shawn King. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, and I said, yeah. I said, this is the first time I've been to this kind of event. What's the rule? What's the etiquette? He said, well, it's Monty, don't tell all the good stories. I got a million good stories, dude. Don't worry about it. He said, well, the etiquette is there's free food, free booze, and someone will come up and give a speech at some point, and that's the price you pay for the free food and the free booze. All right, that's fair. I had no problem with that. So we go up to the bar, and the guy says, well, what would you like? I said, I'll have a beer. What kind of beer do you have? And he points behind him, and there is this long, probably 20 different kinds of beer. And above it is 10 different kinds of whiskey and scotch. And I said, how much is the whiskey and scotch? He said, it's free. Huh? It's free. The Jameson 18 is free? Uh-huh. Can I get a double? Guy says, do you want a quadruple? Okay. And they're off. Me, Adam, Chris Breen, Bob Levitas found a nice cozy corner, and these were in the good old days when you were allowed to smoke inside. They were handing out cigars. So the four of us are sitting around drinking really expensive scotch really expensive booze, smoking really expensive cigars, and getting really liquored up. So 2 hours in, we see this guy walking through the crowd, and he's got these two models on his arm, eye candy, and they're both carrying one of the scanners. And Chris Breen says, okay, here it goes. Now comes the speechifying. And we're like, that's fair. You know, you want to give us free booze and free cigars? We'll listen to your speech. Guy walks up on this raised stage, and he is the Canon USA CEO. He's from Japan, but he's the CEO of Canon USA. And he says, thank you. Basically, the short version is, thank you all very much for being here this evening. We're announcing our new Canon Z scanner. Enjoy the food, drink. Please come by our booth at Macro Expo to see the scanner. Thank you very much. He bows and walks off. And Chris Breen jumps to his feet and goes, that's the greatest speech ever! Guy took like 30 seconds. And we're going back to drinking. 2 hours later, oh dear God, the four of us are drunk. And Breen and Levitas are just trading war stories back and forth about various events things they got. And Adam and I are just sitting there soaking it all in. And they introduced us to a bunch of people. This was a press event. So that's where I got to meet a lot of the press people that I still know to this day. So at the end of it, people are filing out. And I walk up to the bar. I'm trying to get one more drink. And the guy is putting away these big magnums of champagne. Like not bottles of champagne, but just gigantic, fat, bottom, giant things of champagne. I think they're magnums. I said, what are you doing with the champagne? He said, we're packing it away. Oh. Were you going to serve it? He said, yeah, but people weren't drinking it. So you were going to serve that bottle of champagne? I said, yeah. Can I have it instead? And the guy looks at me, rightfully so, like I'm some sort of hick. Like I'm some sort of hay-eating, Kansas-living, dumbass hick. And he goes, all right, fine. And he gives me one. He looks at the other bottle and goes, here, take this one too. So he gives me both bottles of champagne. So I remember these things are massive. These are huge bottles of champagne. And I'm like, well, I probably can't walk out of this room with these bottles of champagne. So I turned them upside down and stuffed them into my jacket, into the sleeves of my jacket, and upside down so they'd fit. So I got them both in there, and I'm walking along like the Hulk, you know. I'm walking out of this place with these two giant bottles of champagne in my armpits, and I'm walking out the door. And Canon's got a bunch of PR people there going, thanks for coming, thanks for coming, thanks for coming. I get almost to the door, and the woman says, don't forget your goodie bag. I said, goodie bag? She said, yes, here's one of the Canon Z scanners for you, along with some martini glasses and shot glasses and stuff. So she handed this bag, and I'm like, oh. I take the bag in one hand, my hand's sticking out like an idiot, like it was a cast on it. And I'm walking down the street now, New York City, walking through Times Square like a frickin' doofus, back to the hotel. The kicker to the story, though, is I heard like 2 months later, Canon fired their PR company because they spent $500,000 on that event. They blew their entire marketing budget on this one event for this one $99 scanner that probably didn't even work all that well. It was so funny. Monty says, but in New York City, nobody would have given you a second glance for that. That's right. I didn't know that. But people were just ignoring me. Completely ignoring me. And Mosquito says, always tip the bartender, even if the drinks are free. Yeah, I always gave. Whenever I'm on one of these events and there's free drinks, I give him $1 per drink. And the guy gave me the champagne, I gave him $10. So the Friday of Expo, I bring the champagne to the show floor so Adam and I can drink out of it because we're going to toast our first Expo. I can't find wine glasses. I can't find champagne glasses. And remember, at this time, our broadcast booth was directly behind the Macomb Journal booth. So they were in the booth in front of us, or we were in the booth behind them, however we want to describe it. And so we were telling people to go sign up for the magazine behind us. So we're getting ready to, Monty says Dixie Cups. Dixie Cups. So we're getting ready to wrap the show up. And as I'm wrapping the show up, talking about all the great things we saw, the things we did, I'm opening up the champagne. And sure enough, I open up both bottles of champagne, and Adam and I are just drinking out of the bottle. As we're talking, we're sucking back on the champagne. I saw earlier that Monty said that he missed those giant expos. Yeah, we all do. Isn't it interesting, though, that at the height of Apple's troubles in the mid-90s was when expos were at their largest. The irony of that is really interesting to me. There were more vendors at those shows than there are now, significantly so. Physically, those shows are 3 times as big as Macro Expo next month. Attendance-wise, they're easily 2.5 times as big. Location-wise, remember, we used to have expos not only in San Francisco, but in New York City and in Tokyo. And then there was the Apple Paris Expo, and then there was a much smaller London Mac Expo. Now there's just one, and I wouldn't even call it a shadow of its former self. It's a bare approximation of its former self. But yeah, the worst time of Apple's existence was when Macro Expos were the largest. And I wonder how much of that is the idea of we've got to band together. We have to stick together. We have to support each other. We have to make sure that this thing that we all love stays a thing that we can all love. There's really not that sense anymore, is there? There's really not that sense of that there's a Mac community, a small but dedicated band. It's the number of Mac users has grown exponentially, but I think the Macintosh community has gotten significantly smaller. MacMan says, I have no idea why, but I have several CDs of YML and MSL episodes. Oh, God, just send those to me. MacMan says, okay, YML number 1 on the way to my Dropbox. I'm going, Brian Monroe, yeah, but he says Boston Macworld Expo. But Brian, Boston and New York were never the same at the same time. Remember, Boston came before New York and after New York. The New York shows came about because of Boston. Because for those folks who went to the Boston shows, who didn't go to the Boston shows, you may not realize the Boston expos were in 2 separate buildings, separated not by a walkway like they are in San Francisco, but separated by a 20-minute bus ride. Literally, you had to get on a bus, and it was a IDG Macworld Expo provided bus, and drive a bus and get on a bus to go to the other building. And it was a giant pain in the ass, especially as the show was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's when IDG decided to move it to New York City, to the Jacob K. Javits Center, which is a significantly larger show. Brian Monroe says, yep, same in San Francisco. No, not the same. You didn't have to get on a bus in San Francisco, Brian. The Moscone Center, North and South Halls are attached by a walkway. So the Javits Center was physically much bigger than the Boston Convention Centers. But the downside is, both in San Francisco and in Boston, the Macworld Expo was the largest convention in those cities. So everyone in the city knew about it. In New York, it didn't make the top 10. It wasn't even a blip on the convention radar in New York City. I'm not saying that's why they stopped. They stopped because IDG was a bunch of arrogant asses and wanted to go back to Boston. And that's a whole another story. Still no Jim Dalrymple. Well, that's disappointing. All right, screw him. Brian says, look up the history of the Moscone Center. You will see that they added the North Hall and then now the West Wing. But during Mackerel Expos, they only had, well, you'll have to clarify that for me, Boston. Oh, sorry, Brian. Monty says, I had a customer who used to exhibit at a trade show held in Javits Center. Refer to that place in many, many unladylike terms. Yeah, it was the biggest issue from a showgoer point of view in Boston, and we all know this if we went to the shows, there's nothing around the Javits Center. Nothing. There were no hotels, no restaurants. It was a bitch to get a cab out of there at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock when the place closed down. The idea of the Javits Center was the city would build the Javits Center and then other industries would build hotels and restaurants around it, but it never happened. So it turned out to be just a dead zone down there. Yeah, we hated going to the New York Expo. It was hot. Oh, God, it was July in New York City. And New York City in July is ripe. It is, Times Square is not a fun place to be in New York in July. And it was just a nightmare to get around there. Whereas San Francisco, obviously, much, much better. Brian says, I went to Mackerel Expos in the 1980s, and I remember taking a bus to the different locations. I'll take your word for that, Brian, if that was Moscone. It certainly was true of the Boston shows, but it wasn't true of any of the San Francisco shows that I attended. And Mosquito says, I understand Javits is firmly run by Teamsters for the benefit of nobody. Yeah, but so is Moscone. So is the Boston Hall. All these convention centers, every convention center is run by the Teamsters to the benefit of Teamsters. There was all kinds of horror stories. My favorite one was when I started working with the guys in Nashville, and they were telling me about moving their booth. I think they had a 10 by 10 at the time from Nashville to New York, or even Nashville to San Francisco. It cost them $20,000 to physically move their booth from the warehouse in Nashville to the back door of the Javits Center. It cost them another $20,000 to move from the back door of the Javits Center to the show floor, and that was all Teamster charges. And so the Teamsters charged them to move stuff from the back door to the show floor. It was not uncommon to have to pay Teamsters $50, $100 to get them to hook up your booth faster than the booth next to you. It was not uncommon to have to pay Teamsters in booze, in beer, in money to get them to take down your booth faster than the other guys. It was just a given. And one of the reasons why the Griffin technology booth came down faster than most others was because Paul Griffin was happy to pay off the Teamsters to give them money to tear his booth. The show closed at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. At 4:45 or 4:45, Paul Griffin was in the back of the Moscone Center or the Javits Center looking for the head of the Teamsters to give him money to say, we're in booth 212, come by our booth first. Hiker BC, I went to the one summer New York City Expo with a super pass. I won on Your Mac Life. God, I was an expensive, sweaty mess, but I got a muddy mouse after the keynote. Yeah, that was the keynote where Apple put a muddy mouse underneath everyone's seat. Well, it doesn't look like we're going to get a Jim Dalrymple viewing this evening, so screw him. Hell with him. Hell with him. Did you see this story? Bill Gates does a red edit, Ask Me Anything. This is a story. It's cool that Bill Gates can do a Reddit and Ask Me Anything. That's kind of cool. But Bill Gates complaining, saying, "Don't call me a college dropout." Really, dude? Did you go to college? Did you attend classes at college? Did you get a degree at college? No? You stopped going to college? Then you're a college dropout. Now, he might think that's a pejorative term, and depending on how it's being used, maybe it is. But it's a fair description of what you did, dude. You went to college, you didn't finish, you're a college dropout. You can't ask people not to call you a college dropout when, in fact, you're a college dropout. All right. Another. I was really looking forward to talking to Jim about this story. Did you guys see this one? Yeah, as Brian Monroe, no shame for being a college dropout. None whatsoever. Not at all. I mean, if someone uses it as a shameful term, that's on them. But you didn't finish college. Lots of people haven't finished college. I don't know. Is there anyone more successful at being a college dropout than Bill Gates? Did you guys see this story on Medium? I wanted to work at Apple really bad. Now, not so much. So this guy figured that working at Apple was going to be his dream job. And good for him. Good for him. For a lot of folks, maybe that is, in fact, your dream job. But it turns out what happened was he got an asshole for a manager. Surprise, surprise. Raise your hand if you've never had an asshole for a manager. My hand's not up. But, and the story somewhat isn't as interesting as what the media wanted to make this out to be. That somehow this was an Apple story. No, it's not an Apple story. It's a corporate story. It's the same story a million people can tell you about a million different jobs and a million different bosses. This is not an Apple story. There are a couple stories in here. The main story is, guy gets job, guy has a jerk for a boss, guy quits job. That's it. That's the main story. What's the other story about this? And there's a couple. And I've heard from a couple Apple employees who will remain nameless because they obviously don't want me to speak out of school. Now, none of them work with this guy, so no one I know knows this guy. But one of the things that they wanted to make clear was that from the story, the guy was a contract employee. Now, it doesn't excuse the manager being a jackass, but he wasn't a real Apple employee. Now, that brings up a whole other question, and Ampersand was mentioning it in the pre-show. Quite often, contract employees are treated like dirt. They're part-time employees. They don't get benefits. They're not treated as if they're real employees by the company. They're excluded from certain things. For example, if you're a contract employee and Apple is handing out new iPhones to people, as they have in the past, you don't get one if you're a contract employee. So companies will use contract employee status to save money. They don't have to pay benefits in a lot of cases. They don't have to pay certain taxes in a lot of cases. There's no workman's compensation. There's maybe no overtime. There's maybe no vacation pay. There's a lot of disadvantages to being a contract employee. Our friend Sly in the IRC chat room, I know Sly was a contractor for many, many years at several jobs. And quite often, she didn't get all the benefits that would accrue to a full-time, real employee. But that doesn't excuse this guy's boss being mean to him. Now, another Apple employee who shall remain nameless also pointed out to me that one of the things that can happen at Apple, not that it does happen or that it's fair or that Apple allows it, some managers will try to weed out those folks who can't cut it. Working at Apple is a very tough gig. It is long hours. It is dedication. It is hard work. As he said, this poor guy in this story didn't get a chance to see his daughter very much. You give up a lot to work at Apple. Rightly or wrongly, that's the fact. People have always talked about how long and hard the work is at Apple. He says it in the story. You've got to be at the top of your game. He said he was working with the best designers he'd ever worked with his entire life. You've got to be at Apple, the creme de la creme, or you're gone. So maybe this asshole manager this guy had was just trying to push the guy to show him how hard it was going to be to work at Apple. And again, I'm not agreeing with that way of managing people. That's just what might have happened. But the bottom line is, for me, if you have a jerk for a boss, stand up for yourself. This guy literally left in the middle of the workday and didn't tell anybody. If your boss is a jerk and you're going to quit anyway, talk to human resources. Apple is a huge multinational corporation. They have a large human resources department. Human resources, at the very least, will listen to you. At least get your complaint down on paper. Because what happens is, if you don't complain, this guy treats the next person just as badly. This guy sounds like simply a bad boss. And by you not saying anything to either the boss himself, to the boss's boss, or to human resources at Apple, what you've done is allowed this asshat to continue being an asshat. And given up a little of your own dignity in the process. Now, I say this from the point of view of a guy who, no word of a lie, and it may sound like I'm proud of this, I'm not proud of it, has been fired from every job he's ever had. Literally. Every gig I've ever had, I've been fired from, except the last one I had in Canmore. I just realized that. I quit that one. But every other job I've been fired from. So maybe my opinions are colored by that fact. The fact that I have a big mouth and I'll use it and I get fired. So one of the things I wanted to talk to Darren about, I want to talk to you guys about now too. What's the worst job you ever had? What is the worst gig you ever had? Send me an email to onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. Sherry says McDonald's. I have two. And typical of me, both of them are not weird, but one of them is definitely weird. When I was in high school, I worked at the local fish plant in the South Shore of Nova Scotia for the summer. I will never do that job again. I can't imagine how much money you'd have to pay me now to work that job. That job paid well. This was high school, so I was probably making 15, 16 bucks an hour. So in high school, that was damn good money. But you were basically bathing in fish guts for 9 hours a day. You picked up, held, handled, moved around fish guts, fish, for hours and hours and hours and hours. Haddock and cod and salmon. If you were lucky, and I say lucky, scallops, big bags, 50-pound bags of scallops come off the boats. And what you would do is you would line up on the dock. The scallop boat would come in, and they already have the scallops bagged, and they'd start this chain gang of throwing scallop bags. So imagine standing out in the summertime. It's 75, 80 degrees. You're already covered in fish guts. And you're playing catch with 50-pound bags of scallops. That's no fun. That's no fun at all. It was so bad that we had to have a separate car. It was an old Ford Courier pickup truck that could only be used for driving me to and from the job. Because anything I touched became just disgusting full of fish. My stepmother would not allow me to come in the house when I came home from work. I literally stood on our back porch, and we were in a farm, so no one else could see me. She had clean clothes there and the hose. And I'd walk up to the back porch, she'd go in the house, I'd strip down naked, and I'd have to hose myself down. So here I am standing outside in the middle of the summertime in Nova Scotia, bare-ass naked, with a water hose myself down, soap myself up, trying to get this fish smell off of me. I would then put the clothes on, and the clothes were just a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt, go in the house as fast as I could, upstairs to the bathroom, and then get in the shower. And then with hot water and soap and scrubbing, get moderately clean. Did that 5 days of the week for 3 or 4 months for 2 or 3 summers. Oh my God, it was awful. Oh my God, it was awful. Monty says his worst job was working for Radio Shack. His shadow had 2 real jobs. I was in the military for 16 and a half years. Then I joined my current company, and I've been there since 1998. MacMan says retail, still work there, so they shall remain nameless. Susan Gear, also McDonald's. On a job I was told to quit. Work harder in 2 weeks or get fired. The other weird job I had, and it was just so weird. Back in the good old days of movies on videotape, I was the Susan Gear, if you're listening, get Logan out of the room. I won't say anything, but it's still an inappropriate conversation. I'll wait. Let me just check email real quick. Again, email at onair@yourmaclifeshow.com. Which is the worst job? Bob Studer says, Moscone Center, there was a time when there was only Moscone North, and Macworld was there and in the Civic Center at the same time. Thank you very much for Bob Studer, for that. Bob, I thank you for confirming that, and Brian Monroe, I was wrong. That was before my time, obviously. Okay, so we're going to assume that Logan's out of the room. My weirdest job was in college when I was the manager of an adult video store. Worst place in the world to have repeat customers, if you know what I'm saying. And the weirdest part of it was that it was a video store that on one aisle, one wall, had the top 100 videos. So all the usual videos you would get in Blockbuster were along that wall. And then on the other wall was the X-rated stuff. And it was hilarious to watch a couple walk in, a man and a woman, because it never failed. Because by the way, in this small area, this is actually North Vancouver, we didn't have a Blockbuster. We had, it was called 24-hour video. And so the 24-hour video had what they called family movies. And they were, like I said, the same ones you would get at Blockbuster. And then they had the porn down the other side. So a couple would always walk in, and the family titles were always alphabetical. They'd walk to the A section, and they'd start reading the names, just like everyone does in every video store in the world. You just walk down, and you're looking at the names. But it never failed that as the couple was reading the names, the guy would walk a little faster. And the guy would end up on the other side much faster than the girl. And it was like we wrote the script, because it happened the exact same way every single time. Every guy would do this. Honey, what about one of these? As if he just discovered porn. As if he did not know before now that these videos were in this building. It was hilarious. It was so funny. But yeah, video, Hiker BC. No way, 24-hour video? Yeah, saloon doors. No. Some of the stores had the saloon doors, but not all of them. My store didn't have saloon doors. It was literally separate. So yeah, repeat customers. The other thing that was really funny was when a woman walked in the store, she walked straight to the front counter. Didn't look left, didn't look right. She always come straight to the front counter and look at the guy behind the counter and say, I want one of those, pointing to the porn titles. She wanted us to pick out a title. And it was invariably because her husband, her boyfriend, her whoever was sitting out in the car and was too much of a coward to come into the store. It's like, you weasel. I can't believe you would send your girlfriend in to the store by herself. Don't do that. Man up and come into the store. That was another gig that paid really well. But yeah, it was just so weird. You know MacGyver? The TV show MacGyver was shot in Vancouver. Richard D. Anderson came into the store. I'm not going to tell you what he rented, but I recognized him coming into the store. For you Canadians out there, you'll be very disturbed to hear at one point Pierre Burton came into the store. Yeah, creeped me out too. It weirded me out too that Canadian icon Pierre Burton was coming into our video store. So those are probably my two weirdest and or worst jobs. I never worked retail. I never worked at McDonald's or anything like that, just because I knew I wouldn't be any good at it. I knew I'd suck at those gigs. Worked at several office type stores and hated every one of those office type places. Yeah, his shadow says, I had an ex that worked at an adult video store. The regulars were creepy as hell. Oh, yeah. Oh, the regulars were just awful. You didn't mind seeing a couple come in or a guy come in and said, I want to spice things up. Do you have any? Because we had, behind the counter, we had a list of various movies. There was couples movies and list of various kinds of movies we could recommend to people. But Mr. Johnson coming in for the third time that week was like, oh, dude, could you please just go to a different store? Like, go to one store a week. Don't come to the same store 3 times a week. Like, oh, man. Mosquito says, you can't ask the clerk's advice about what's good. You just can't. No, you would be surprised, Mosquito, how many people actually did. They would walk up because they assumed, and not necessarily rightfully true, they assumed that if you work at a porn store, you must be an expert in porn. It's not true, but that's what they would assume. I don't know if it's still around, but there was a club here in Vancouver called the Penthouse Club at the time, would get adult video stars to come and dance at the club. And they would always give us free passes to go to the club. It's like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to see them in real life. I just don't want to. I'm just not interested. I'm sharing too much again, aren't I? So yeah, that was the weirdest job I had. What else did I have on to? Oh, thank God. This is the best story of the year so far. Yes, it's only February, but this is the best story of the year. Cell phone use on planes, a bad idea, U.S. lawmakers say. Thank you to U.S. lawmakers for finally having some common sense. And even though you're allowed to do it, the FCC, Federal Aviation Administration, decision last year to allow passengers to use their phones. The Representative Bill Schuster, Republican of Pennsylvania, both Republican and Democratic House members said they believe in-flight calls will be noisy and disturbing to other passengers and possibly disruptive. Most passengers would like their flights to go by as quickly as possible. Representative Bill Schuster of Pennsylvania said, when it comes to cell phones on planes, tap, don't talk. Rep. Nick Rahal said the prospect of sitting among dozens of people all talking on their cell phones in a confined space raises serious safety, if not comfort considerations, especially at a time when passengers face less legroom, higher fees, and pricey flights. That is the best news this year. Because I was really worried that, because in some European carriers, you are allowed to use your phone. You are actually allowed to talk on your phone in some European air carriers. But it's great to see the American government is stepping in, because there would have been pressure on the airlines to do it. All it would have taken is for Southwest Airlines to say, hey, we allow this, and people would have been going and booking on Southwest, and then force American and all the other airlines to follow suit. Now, granted, it might be argued that for someone like me, if Southwest advertised, you can talk on your phone, I'm not flying Southwest. But it's good that the government has stepped in, and hopefully these are the first steps in an outright ban, not on cell phone use. I have no problem with someone playing a game on their phone, or even texting on their phone, or using the internet on their phone. But having a phone call on your phone steps over a line. And it's been shown in many occasions that even listening to half a conversation is much more disruptive. Say, for example, the two people next to you are having a conversation that you can hear clearly. That's easier to ignore and less psychologically, I don't want to say stressful, but less psychologically difficult, shall we say, than listening to half a conversation, than listening to a cell phone conversation. So I think this is great news for flyers. As the article says, Flying already sucks enough. There's no reason for the government to make it suck more. I want the government to do as much as they possibly can to make it suck less, not more. How many of you guys subscribe to Wired magazine? I do. Brian Monroe says, Shawn, you'd love Japan, as they would have bans on cell phone calls in their trains and buses. Yeah, I've been to Tokyo. I noticed that. The guys from Top Gear did a challenge in Japan, got yelled at for talking on their mobile phones. Yeah, I read that. For some reason, I get the sense that Wired magazine is losing it. I've read a bunch of articles recently about Apple that just are so tone deaf. This one, 10 companies Apple could acquire instead of buying back all that stock. Okay, generally these articles are kind of dumb to begin with, but this one is particularly dumb because of the list of companies that they suggest. Tesla. Why the hell would Apple buy Tesla? They say the argument for Apple buying Tesla is pretty much sealed with one word, iCar. That's idiotic. Why? Why would Apple go to the bother of buying Tesla to make cars when General Motors, Mercedes, BMW, Ford, all these companies are already putting Apple technology in their cars? Why should Apple buy Tesla to put Apple technology in cars? That's idiotic. Ferrari has got a new 4-seat Ferrari, ugly vehicle, with iPads in the back of the headrests for rear seat passengers. Are you suggesting maybe Apple should buy Ferrari? Because that's just as stupid as them buying Tesla. The only one that makes even a slight bit of sense is Apple buying Dropbox. But I think Apple's all in with iCloud. There was a time, you probably read the story a few months back, when the folks at Dropbox told the story of Steve Jobs coming to them and saying, sell to us or we're going to destroy you, basically, short version. And they said no. And, good for them. Because Apple certainly didn't destroy them. Dropbox is, in a lot of ways, not always, but in a lot of ways, better than iCloud. Another suggestion, Apple should buy Uber. What? For you folks who don't know, Uber is a car rental company. A ride-sharing company that's gotten a lot of good and bad publicity. But why would Apple buy Uber? He says, Uber amounts to a transportation network built on top of an iPhone platform. It's a precursor to an on-demand same-day delivery network for self-driving cars. Why couldn't Uber be the same for Apple? That makes no sense. Uber has nothing to do with self-driving cars. Apple should buy Square. Why? Apple has got iTunes. Apple has got, what was it? I'm maybe pulling this number out of my butt. 1 billion iTunes accounts. Why do they need Square? Square just gets in the way of the iTunes accounts. Why would I use Square when I can buy stuff via iTunes? And don't think for a second that iTunes and Mac App Store won't become more. I have no doubt that at some point you'll be able to buy more things from the iTunes Store. I'm surprised you can't buy DVDs from the iTunes Store, where they would, like Amazon, ship you the DVD. You'd buy it from the iTunes Store, and you not only get the digital version, but Apple would then, like Amazon, ship you the hard version too. But buying Square makes no sense whatsoever. Jawbone. Okay, Jawbone makes cool Bluetooth headsets. So why not just suggest Apple go back to the 1990s and make printers and CD players and quick-take cameras? Speaking of cameras, GoPro. Again, why would Apple buy GoPro? It's got nothing to do. this feels like it's a wish list of things that the author, what's his name, Ariel Zambelich, it feels like this is just a wish list of the things that the author thinks might be cool. Oh, this would be cool. Let's throw 10 things up against the wall and write this article for Wired and make $500. It's idiotic. There are companies that Apple there are companies that Apple could buy that fit in with Apple. Except for Dropbox, none of the companies this idiot suggests in any way, shape, or form fit in with what Apple does. Or what Apple might even do in the future. Mosquito, yes. Apple should make peripherals that other companies are already doing very well. What a shallow twerp. Exactly. Now, granted, Apple does, and will move into markets where others are doing things well. iPhone, iPad, iPod. It can be argued that it was a market that others were in, but certainly not to the extent of these kinds of things. I can't see Apple competing with General Motors by buying Tesla. I can't see Apple competing with 100 different Bluetooth headset manufacturers by buying Jawbone. And I don't know who the hell they'd be I don't know what the reasoning would be behind buying Uber. It just makes no logical sense. And I hate articles that have these bizarre premises of Apple should do this that has nothing to do with Apple's reality. Not your reality. Not the reality of the guy who's writing the article. But look at it from the Apple reality point of view, you numbnut. Another classic example of this is there are all kinds of stories that I think that the media shouldn't even write. Analyst Mark Moskowitz sends out a research note to his investors, clients, whoever it is, saying that Apple might be hit by a weaker smartphone market, suffering from customers delaying their upgrades, and from more vendors joining forces. This guy believes that what if Apple Anywhere would turn iOS devices into computers? Okay, first of all, iOS devices are already computers, you idiot. I don't care how you define a computer. An iPhone is a computer. An iPad is a computer. It may not be a super uber powerful computer, but it's as much a computer as a Chromebook or a netbook, and no one denies that those things are computers. So there's that. Secondly, Apple has said they're not going to converge Mac OS X and iOS. Why does this particular analyst, Mark Moskowitz, think that Apple was lying to him when they were interviewed by Jason Snell of Macworld? Does he know something we don't? No, he does not. But this is an example of this is what he wants, whether it makes sense for Apple or not, so therefore he's going to do it. And lastly, this is an example of an article that didn't have to be written. This is written by Lance Whitney, a known moron over at CNET. This is the kind of article that you would hope a good editor would write. No, there's no basis in fact of this article. It's supposition by some analyst in a research note to clients. It's not news. It's not a story. There's nothing to hang your hat on as a writer in this story. You're kind of making stuff up. You're ignoring facts and evidence and pulling out of thin air the facts that you want in order to make your point. And your point's stupid. So I blame less these kind of analysts than I do the media for reporting these kinds of things. Wouldn't it be great if the media would step up and go, no. You can say this. You can be an analyst and say it, but we're not reporting that. No, that's just stupid. Command W. Yeah, there should be a Woz. His shadow. Woz says Apple should, and that's my rule. Command W. I literally, when I see that in an article, hit Command W. because there's two reasons, and I love Woz. I respect Woz as an engineer. I respect Woz as the softer, gentler founder of Apple. I respect Woz for his philanthropy, which he doesn't get nearly enough credit for. But no offense to anyone who loves Woz, I don't respect him for his opinions about what Apple should do, because he doesn't know what he's talking about. The other aspect of it is the media consistently gets Woz wrong on these quotes. And part of it is because Woz is a practical joker and likes to pull the leg of the media. Last time he did it was this one, Apple should make an Android phone. He didn't say that. He teased it to a media outlet knowing they'd run with the story. And no other media outlet bothered to contact Woz except for one, and Woz writes, nope, didn't say that. So the media gets Woz wrong all the time. Woz pulls the leg of the media on a regular basis. And thirdly, Woz generally doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to Apple and the future. So, again, no offense intended, Mr. Wozniak. I see a story that says Woz says, Command W. I literally go no further than that. Because I know the writer is an idiot, because you shouldn't be quoting Woz about what Apple should be doing. Literally, Steve Wozniak has no more notion about what Apple should do in the future than you or I do. He has no secret insider information. He said that in the past. He doesn't get prototypes ahead of time. He's not consulted on products or projects ahead of time by anyone at Apple. He said that. He's admitted that. The only thing Woz knows about Apple is the same thing the rest of us know about Apple. So therefore, he's not a credible source for information. Sorry, Woz. Sorry, Woz fans. ArcSign, Apple can just go the route of GE and do much more financial stuff, but Apple won't do that. Apple will bring new products and keep changing the world. Yeah, there's all kinds of things that Apple could do. But from everything I've heard and the way I understand Apple and what I know from people I've talked to and what Tim Cook has said, Apple has a very clear idea of who they are as a company and where they're going to be going in the next 6 months, 18 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And I don't think any of this Apple should stuff is going to sway them from that goal. And I think it's one of the reasons why Apple's successful too, is they don't run around trying to catch the latest Firefly. They're not like 9-year-olds trying to catch lightning bugs in a glass and go, oh, there's the latest, best, greatest, cool thing. Oh yes, oh. Apple knows what they want. They know how to get there, and that's where they're going. I think it's fairly simple. Yeah, Apple could have come up with an iWatch last month, and it would have looked like the Pebble. Would have been put together well. It would have looked nice. But it would have just been a Pebble with an Apple logo on it. Do you want that? I don't want that. Apple could do a lot of things. But because of their focus, they only do what they know they can do incredibly well. I saw this story today at the, let me just get this one for you guys. At the 9 p.m. peak, which apparently is the peak of internet usage, the iPad gets 4 times the Android tablet usage. If you look at the graphic, the graph they have on this page, and let me show it to you on the video for you folks who are watching the video, the top of that graph is 9 p.m. and the iPad. So they've structured the graph so that the very top 100% is the max usage of the iPad at 9 p.m. each evening. The next line below it, the gray line, is Android tablets, which also have a bit of a bump at 9 p.m. each evening. And Android tablets look to be about 20% of Apple tablet use. 25%, I guess, though, they'd say. And Microsoft Surface tablets are just basically flatlined. Now that's cool. That's interesting. I kind of take these things with a grain of salt because I don't know how they're tabulating this. I don't know how they're getting this data, how they're getting this information. Well, let's take it at face value. The question I always ask is, what are Android people doing with their tablets? Are they doing things other? This just indexes web usage. This just indexes online usage, whether that be email or web surfing or maybe Netflix, whatever it might be. So if Android users are using their tablets 4 times less than Mac users, than iPad users, what are they using them for? I'm very curious about that. I'm not knocking Android. But what I'm asking is, what are people using Android tablets for? That's the thing that just amazes me. I would have assumed that you use an Android tablet the same way that I use. Folks who have an Android tablet use their Android tablet in the same way that I use my iPad. Email, web surfing, games, movies, that kind of stuff. I can assume that's the basics of tablet usage. So if we take out email, if we take out surfing, if we take out Netflix movies, maybe online games, what are Android folks actually using their devices for? I'm curious, really curious to know about that. His shadow in the RC chat says, Shawn, Eddie Q is back in the news. What did Eddie say now? Monty, not that I put a lot of stock in Apple rumors, but I'll be disappointed if the rumors about the next iPhone version being bigger than the iPhone 5S. The iPhone 4 was perfect size for my hand. The 5 is just slightly bigger, uncomfortable to use one-handed. Any bigger will only make that problem worse. That's an excellent question, Monty. Does Apple feel the need or pressure to come out with a larger iPhone? Because I agree with you, Monty, and I've got fairly decent-sized hands. But even I find the iPhone 5S a little annoying at times, trying to get to that upper right corner. Bigger than that, I don't know if I'd like. I think much bigger than that, the iPhone becomes a two-handed device. Is that bad? I don't know. I'm used to using it one-handed, but I'm pretty sure if the iPhone had a physically bigger screen, we'd probably get used to using it two-handed, wouldn't we? I don't know. Is there a possibility that Apple would do both? That they would come out with a physically larger iPhone, and still sell the iPhone 5, maybe like the iPad Air versus the iPad Mini? Think of it as the iPhone Air and the iPhone Mini. Is that a possibility? I think it is. I think that's where a lot of these rumors are coming from, is that Apple is ordering and testing different sizes of iPhones, and therefore component manufacturers are leaking tidbits of information that may not add up to anything. It's only going to happen if Apple believes that the market, the consumers, want a larger iPhone. Apple will not come out with a larger iPhone simply to keep up with Samsung, simply to be the same as any other company. Apple will not do that. If Apple sees a market for it, if Apple sees a demand for it, if they see from the consumer, who is their customer, not Samsung, not tech geeks, not CNET, not Wall Street, if Apple sees a consumer need for it, yeah, they would come up with a bigger iPhone. I don't think they need one. I personally don't think Apple needs a bigger iPhone. I like the iPhone the way it is now. It's almost too big. It is a little finicky to get to those top corners. I think it also comes down to how you think people use their iPhone. If your iPhone is your only device, then yeah, you're going to want a bigger screen to be able to read on, to be able to watch videos on, to be able to play games on. I'd love to know the percentage of people who have both an iPhone and an iPad. Because I think if those people are like me, who has both, I don't need a bigger iPhone because I have an iPad. You know what I mean? There's no need for me to have a big iPhone because I've got a big iPad. How many of those folks who want a bigger iPhone don't have an iPad? I think that's key. Monty says, I've had a handshake with Shawn twice. My hands are infant sized compared to his. Yes, but Monty, I'm also a foot taller than you are and 100 pounds heavier. So that I'm teasing. No, I'm not. Oh, wait. I might be 100 pounds heavier, but I think I'm only 6 inches taller than you are, Monty. Monty, you're what, about 5'9"? I think? Yeah, he's 5'9", yeah. And I'm 240 pounds. And Monty, I think you'd be lucky to be pushing 150. You're a slim fellow. Bob Studer says, cell phones on planes. I wish they were making calls on buses and trains too. Bob, I'm with you, dude. I'm so with you. It's 143. Yeah, Monty. Yeah, so officially, Monty, I am 100 pounds bigger than you are. Coming back to Vancouver, our car broke, so we don't have a car. So when I don't want to go anyplace, I have to travel by bus. And it's gotten so much worse on buses than obviously 12 years ago when I was last in Vancouver. It is almost torturous, especially because now my bus trips, if I have to go downtown, it's an hour and a half in the bus. I have to catch a bus, get on the SkyTrain, and get downtown. That's generally about an hour and a half. So there is, I got to say, at least 75% of the time, there is a cell phone conversation going on around me at some point in that trip. The vast majority of the time, someone's talking to someone on a phone. And the worst part is, it's not a conversation of, hi, I'm on the SkyTrain, I'll be home in 20 minutes, thanks. It's, well, my brother is not a very nice person. He didn't finish college, and my kids are rotten, and I don't like my boss, and I got to pick up some groceries, and what am I going to get the kids for Christmas? And oh my God! I have never wanted to reach out and smack people more, and just say, stop talking, stop with the drivel, stop with the crap, stop. Why are you the person on this end of the line talking more than the other person? Because it's like a constant stream of consciousness talking. You haven't even shut up and let the other person talk. God, it's awful. Mosquito, are your buses equipped with upholstered seats or hard plastic? Both. Depends on how old the bus is. Sly could speak to that. She takes buses every day. Sly, you can tell Mo more about the buses. ArcSign says, I'm an iPad guy. The iPhone is a cramped, tiny device. Hiker BC, there's already a phablet. It's called the iPad Mini. MacMan says, I have both and we don't want a big phone. Yeah, I think that's probably the case, that if you've already got an iPhone and an iPad, even if you've got an iPad Mini, you don't really see the need for an iPhone. But then I also bet, and you guys with both devices, correct me if I'm wrong, which device do you reach for more often if they're both within reach? I find the iPad more because of the bigger screen. I don't play any games on my iPhone. I play them all on the iPad. I use my iPhone just basically for text messaging. Obviously phone calls, when I get very few of those. Logan wants to know where the CIG is. He misses Alessandra. Oh, Logan, that's very sweet of you. She was supposed to be on tonight's show, but this morning at 11 o'clock she called into work. So she had to work the afternoon, evening shift. She works for Hudson Bay Company. She is working for it's a gift registry, the wedding gift registry at Hudson Bay. I guess someone called in sick, and so they called her in. But she was going to be on tonight's show, but unfortunately because of work, she had to quit. But I will pass that on to her Logan. I miss having her on the show too. MacMan, I haven't murdered anyone yet. If I was like Sly and had to go on the buses, if I had to do that bus trip twice a day, an hour and a half each way, twice a day, I think I would at least be up on charges. At least. Because, that would just... Now, granted, what you would do is you get headphones. And that would probably make the most sense. If you're bothered by people on buses, trains, even planes, put headphones on. Turn your music on. So that's obviously a solution. Lesh says maybe there is no one on the other end of the line. That's it's a possibility. Can't rule that out. Absolutely cannot rule that out. Let's wrap this thing up, folks. Don't forget, March 19th will be the 20th anniversary of Macintosh Internet Broadcasting right here on this very show. We will do the origin of Your Mac Life. We're also going to be giving away a metric buttload of prizes thanks to the nice folks at Danny P, at Fuse Designs, at Glovely, nice folks at Pixelmator, Primo Visto are giving stuff away. The Scotty Vest folks, our friends at SmileSoftware.com, nice folks at Topaz Labs are giving stuff away, along with the very cool folks at Tidbits.com, PadAndQuill.com, MacFun.com, BoinksSoftware.com, and TomBin.com are all giving away. Just don't know if I'm going to be able to get to all the story. It might be a two-parter show, because I've got, and this is just the first batch of people who I've reached out to get a batch of people coming, I hope. So don't forget entry forms. Go to the website, yourmaclifeshow.com. At the top of the page, click on the Friends of YML contest entry form, and that will send me an email, and I'll drop your name into our virtual hat. Or, even better, both for you and for me, quite frankly, more so for me, subscriber to Your Mac Life at $2, $5, $10, $15 a month, whatever it might be. Even $2 adds up. I would appreciate $2. That'd be nice. $2 a month. Would it kill you? You can subscribe to Your Mac Life for $2, $5, $10, $15 a month. Comes out of your PayPal account or your major credit card. Every month sends me $2. I will drop your name in the virtual hat on your behalf. Bing, bang, boom. You don't got to worry about it. It'll be done. I will take care of all of it just for you for the low, low price of $2 a month. So March 19th will be the show. This Friday, I'm very excited about this. This Friday, Valentine's Day, by the way, happy Valentine's Day to all of you who celebrate it. If you don't celebrate, happy Singles Awareness Day.